Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. We are on the other side of the equinox, and we have recently seen the entrance of Venus into the sign of Scorpio. So, we're moving through part of the lunar cycle that I personally love. We have the moon in the sign of Gemini today for this week, beginning with its conjunction to Jupiter. And as that happens, the moon is preparing to do a last quarter square to Mercury, who's still in Virgo, post its shadow from the retrograde. And I think this energy in particular can be clarifying of where we're in this process of breaking free in our thoughts and in our thinking from ways of having self-doubt around what we hear, what we know, what we feel, and it can be really hard these days. You see from this chart that there are these polarities activated, right? The nodes of the moon are a natural polarity, the north node in Aries, south node in Libra, and then we have the sun moving to conjunct the south node in Libra. We have Mercury also there. And we have Neptune here on the Pisces side. So this week we'll see Mercury oppose Neptune, and we'll see, the sun cross the south node. And a part of what I've been reflecting on, someone said in a comment on the association video, that we're not in an argument of liberal versus conservative. And I really think that's a proper statement for this time. We often can think of either where we're arguing between the reality of the patriarchy or the matriarchy, right? Capricorn versus Cancer. We're arguing between the reality of my needs versus your needs, right? We're arguing between the reality of my opinions or my beliefs, right? My thoughts, my ideas, and your belief system, your religion, your ideology, and in that kind of mindset, that split of duality, right, which is like the polarity, there's just immense tension because one or both people have to sacrifice rightness, being right, in order to come together, right? Or in order for there to be peace. Seemingly, the unification is in what we might say, oh, we think the same way. And a lot of the times what we'll do is we'll simply avoid having those conflicts by either one, suppressing our ideas, our thoughts, our views, our intuitive knowings. Two, we'll avoid the conflict by keeping our thoughts to ourselves or not sharing what we feel or what we think. We can similarly avoid the conflict by only hanging out with those who share the same beliefs, ideas, or opinions, right? If we're highly religious and we're really identified with a particular belief system, we might only spend time with those people who share those beliefs and ideas. And then when we find ourselves in contact with others who share differing beliefs or opinions, struggle with either casting judgment or feeling alienated or feeling separated or feeling a real call to conflict, right? And the conflict can be deeply emotional these days relative to Mars in Cancer, right? We can feel a sense of our social purpose, our emotional purpose. How do I use my voice? How do I share my voice? How do I speak my truth when there are all these polarizing thoughts and ideas and beliefs and feelings? And with Venus in the sign of Scorpio, like these things touch deeply on the roots of our attachments. whether it's our attachment to being right, our attachment to being loved, our attachment to feeling connected, our attachment to being seen. One of the things that I've learned so deeply in my partnership is that we're often have very different views. We often have very different ideas or thoughts about how something should be done. And where my conditioning is really oriented towards being right about the way that I see things as being done, it's incredibly alienating to their feelings and to actually to the creative possibilities that come from being more open-minded or being open to a different way. And having to navigate, right? We might be having to navigate strong feelings, strong ideas, whether ours or somebody else's. The more we hold a perspective of open-mindedness, and the more we hold a curiosity about, well, what is this idea, or what is this thought, what is this belief system, and where is it coming from? Because one of the things that's interesting, at least, we could attribute it particularly to the political field, but is that there really isn't liberal versus conservatives anymore. There are so many things that were otherwise considered liberal ideologies, which are being reflected in conservative. And there's also a great deal of propaganda in both fields, in both realms, which is designed to separate us, not to unite us, right? It is designed to call into question and create, and undermine our own individual thinking and our own inner knowing. And this can happen so easily when we're in the face of big structures of power, systems of power, and especially when we're in the face of our own deep conditioning and our own fear of rejection, betrayal, abandonment, hurt, right? In our own personal lives, in our own relationships. And so this week, I think, as we navigate this particular side of the lunar cycle, we are in this closing space of the lunation. So we're moving into Cancer tomorrow on Tuesday. And the Cancer moon is the natural home of the moon. It's about our vulnerability and our connection. It really, I often summarize Cancer as nourishment, protection, and care, right? And then the Cancer moon makes a last quarter square to the sun in Libra, activating that. How do we navigate our personal needs in relationship? The parts of us that are most vulnerable, most afraid of being hurt, betrayed, and abandoned, and where that often creates a sense of disempowerment, self-doubt, separation from others, or a feeling of I can't get my needs met here. I can't be myself and be loved, right? These inner contradictions that reinforce a sense of not enough or inferior, or a sense of guilt, or a sense of otherwise needing to be in control, right? And sometimes we maintain that control by maintaining separation, by maintaining our aloneness, by maintaining our ideas and our attitudes as separate. But when we think about Pluto and the ultimate nature of the soul, that is the dynamic of the soul. The resistance and the separation from our source, from connection, from one another, and especially from our divine source, and the connection to each other. And I think with Jupiter in Gemini, we're going to have to be wary of, one, the immense overabundance of ideas and where lies and duplicity and propaganda and ideas can just proliferate like bacteria in a petri dish. It's really easy once that little piece of bacteria gets in there in the right conditions, it turns into mold or illness, or, it's like, I don't know. We've been sick the last couple of days, and this little thing just got into my lungs and turned into something else. I don't even know what it was. It's like an invisible little thing that I breathed in of air. And here I am days later with it like deep in my chest, and I'm producing mucus and inflammation. And what I can recognize from this experience is it's really bringing for me up this deeper calling to understand and identify the vulnerabilities and the things. Like whenever I see lung stuff, I always attribute it to grief and to the heart, right? And wherever we've been conditioned by ideas, whether our own or somebody else's, to feel separate, alone, alienated, disconnected, hurt, abandoned, betrayed, or rejected. These are the very things that we are in the process of healing. And the very nature of healing often is that it gets worse before it gets better, that it becomes more intensified before, like at least from the perspective of the body, before the whole immune system is activated in place. And if that immune system is already weakened, right, and we could call this our emotional immune system or our internal guidance system, if it's already been weakened by situations, past traumas, relationships where we've lived under the pressure of guilt, or, where we've had experiences of structures and, especially like corporate structures, government structures, things creating a lot of self-doubt that we have to rebel against in order to be free from that. I think we have quite an opportunity here to be able to feel what's necessary in terms of our own personal courage, and to be able to clarify within our minds what is true for us and still see the perspective of others without actually having to separate ourselves from them. And that has been a huge lesson for me in my own relationship, that I can see and hear his perspective, his feelings, his thoughts about it, what he's thinking. I can have my own. They can be different. Our approaches can be completely different. And yet there is a unified desire for healing, for love, and for connection underneath all of it. So we have to work sometimes harder, sometimes easier to get to that. And in the face of, long-standing patterns, big power dynamics, where we have struggled to feel safe enough, to feel nourished, to feel protected, it might be harder, But I think with Venus in the sign of Scorpio, there's a general undoing process that helps us to release our attachments. And one of the ways that we can get to that even faster is letting go of our attachment to being right. Being right about the trauma, being right about our story about abandonment, being right about how hurt we've been in the past, being right about how vulnerable we are, but being afraid to access our vulnerability for courage, being right about the conditions of the world, that they cannot be changed, that we cannot do anything about it. Excuse me. Being right about how sick we are, right? And that idea that these things, they kind of take hold in our lives and they last longer than really is necessary. And when evolution is underway, especially when it's being accelerated for us at different times in our life, we really can't hold on to anything. We can't hold on to what's known and familiar. We can't hold on to past conditioning, even if it doesn't serve us. I noticed this week I was coping a lot, for the way that I was feeling with things that I used to cope with to an excess, to an extreme. Sugar, shopping, you know, and that, witnessing myself do it, of course, not to be judging myself or like shaming myself, actually helped me connect with the emotion underneath those actions, right? We don't do things from a self-sabotage perspective to bury ourselves. We do things because there's somewhere inside a belief that this is going to bring me relief. And whether it's using substances or dissociating, or whether it's, patterns of aloneness or disconnection, whether it's like ruminating thoughts or suppressing our feelings, whatever it is that we have done, however we act those things out, they often will continue to show up for us in subtle and not so subtle ways, because of course, on a soul level, we want to be whole. We want to know our wholeness. We want to actually know our own capacity to evolve beyond these things. And there have been times in my life where I have to really ask God to just like take this from me, because I don't know how to do it for myself. And other times, like the last couple of days, where I am subtly self-aware of how it feels and how the avoiding of my own emotional needs and what I really, really need versus what I think I need, or what is really, really going on versus what if we're conditioned to believe that nobody cares, nobody loves me, that I'm not good enough, that everything turns out, that I can't succeed, whatever the story is, then these subtle forms of self-sabotage are these patterns in relationship, these patterns of self-undoing, will in fact be there as a way to protect that emotional imprint. And then the way out, of course, is through the courage to be able to say, well, maybe this is old, maybe this is familiar, maybe this is conditioned, maybe this is protecting feelings that I have that need a voice, right? Mercury is going to move from Virgo into Libra. We're going to have to give voice to these things in relationship. One of the most vulnerable places of all. We're going to have to reach out and make connection, even if that risks us losing that connection, even if that may come at the expense of judgment or differences in opinions or conflict. Emotionally, absurd, not reaching for those patterned ways of, and it, like people call it self-care, right? Like eating a sweet treat, comfort foods, or, um, you know, but it's like it never feels good to me afterwards. It's always on some level depleting of my energy and doesn't feel as good as when I'm eating really nourishing foods or spending money, which then, on things that have to be managed or things that break or things that don't really need, only depletes what feels like already a limited resource for our family. And yet I can see how so desperately, like the heart longs to know its safety to feel what it feels. And in the place of not having to be right about it, or being able to be like, oh, okay, like little children often get upset about things that as an adult, logically, I look at it and I'm like, God, this is so irrational. My 4-year-old often. Like, why are you so upset? This is an irrational need or whatever. It's and the very thing that is happening contradicts what it is that she wants. Like she's screaming and crying, but if she would calm down, she would actually get what she wants. I notice the part of me that resists that, and the part of me that's also very familiar with that, right? We can be familiarly rebelling against the very thing that would give us love, comfort, connection, understanding, intimacy, because we're conditioned to believe that it's not going to happen or it's not accessible for us, or the emotions actually have overtaken us in such a way that we're not able to see clearly how close love is, right? How all of our needs are met in a way, how what we're going through is essentially a process of liberation from that attachment or from, the, what's the word? Yeah, from the pattern that hasn't been serving our soul for some time now. And I do think as both Mercury and the sun will cross the South Node this week, we're getting ready for eclipse season, for our last eclipse of this season. We're in the in-between, right? And this is a very potent Libra new moon that is happening with this eclipse. So we're in the closing of the cycle that's preparation for that eclipse. And part of the time, the moon will be in the sign of Leo, right? Which is about our creative self-actualization. Leo is a sign that reflects the special purpose and destiny and the desire that we each have to be seen, to be joyful, to be creative. And that Leo moon, of course, is going to square Uranus, which has been making, a trine to Pluto. It's a 3-degree orb on these outer planets. So these kind of orbs can last quite a long time, especially with both of them retrograde. It's not as strong of a thing. And the moon is a very quick sort of passing square. But I noticed it right the other day when the moon was conjunct Uranus, how these deep feelings were coming up. And I was aware of the power of staying with that. And then, of course, how that allows us to liberate from the pattern or to see it differently or to feel differently about the needs that we have, And with all these planets coming into this balsamic phase, right? I don't have my Pluto 2 book with me on the road, but Jeffrey Wolk Green talks about the balsamic phase. It's a time of closing out an evolutionary cycle. And just like the new phase, it's entirely dark, right? You cannot see the moon. You are unwinding and ending these particular patterns. You're unraveling things that maybe even from a conscious perspective, you can't necessarily identify. There's only the feeling emotionally that I have to instinctually do something different. There's only the feeling inside that there has to be a different way. And, from a divine perspective, that can be when we pray for, an intervention. We pray for mercy. We ask for grace to guide us. We ask for clarity. And we come to that clarity within ourselves through the process of really deciding that we don't know what's right, that we don't know what everything is for, and a lot of the times things happen in eclipse season that can be life-changing, so sometimes it can turn the course of the events of our life for the next 18 years, right? These eclipses are tied to 18-year cycles. Some of these planets, including Pluto and the things that are happening, these are ending 248-year cycles. So we're facing on some level ancestral karmas, ancestral realities that are just, bigger than us in a big way, in terms of like in the United States and what's happening with the government and what's happening with the political changes, and all over the world, what's happening with people's relationships, what's happening with people's works, their calling, their jobs, what's happening in their families. I think you could probably identify in your own life where the level of uncertainty also is kind of in a perfect match to the emotional intensity and to the desire and the need for something new to take root. And with the new moon, we are seeding a new evolutionary cycle relative to all things Libra. And if you look at this new moon, it's ruled by a Venus in Scorpio. So there's some deep undoing. She's moving to trine Mars in Cancer. The moon is with Black Moon Lilith, Mercury, and the Sun, and Juno. This is a re-evaluation and a new seed of commitment in our lives to the very relational dynamics and patterns that have kept us bound in attachments that have not given us what we want. And whether it's a self-undoing or an undoing in relationship or an undoing of obstacles, patterns, thought processes, whether it's a big change in our recognizing, okay, we haven't known what to do to get these needs met. We haven't overcome the belief that our needs can never be met. How do we then begin to cultivate a relationship to our life and our world that actually seeks unity within our needs? That actually says that there aren't two opposing polarities. There isn't masculine, feminine. There isn't liberal, conservative. There isn't you versus me. There's only we. And we, as a part of we, if I have needs, you have needs. If we have conflict, we have conflict, right? If I have conflict, we have conflict, right? And if we want peace, if we want love, if we want intimacy, and if we want connection, the sacrifice is vulnerability. The sacrifice is the past for a new sense of empowerment that actually honors our wounds can never be separate. We can never be hurt by someone when we're not hurt inside. There isn't someone out there that's going to hurt us in here, right? If the hurt is in here, it will be triggered by out there. We can certainly look to those reflections. And with Jupiter and Gemini, a part of what we get in the clarity of mind is coming to our own truth that is beyond all ideas that we've held, but through a curiosity and through being willing to not really know. And I think that's the big lesson that keeps us not necessarily in a place of fear or uncertainty or instability, but actually opens us to a space of possibility that maybe all of our needs can be met. Maybe unity and connection, maybe intimacy and emotional healing, maybe releasing the patterns of hurt from the past can also coincide with us stepping into our greatest power to create. And our deepest vulnerability can be our greatest gift and asset to our lives and to our partners and to our friends and to our family and to our work. And maybe that is exactly what the world needs in order to change. So, my friends, love you so much. Wishing you so many blessings for this eclipse. I wanted to make an announcement. I am the host and the administrator for the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers. And actually, the very next day after this eclipse, on Thursday, October 3rd, we'll be kicking off a 4-day conference with 15 different evolutionary astrologers who are going to be teaching and lecturing on all sorts of topics. Amazing, amazing topics. Everyone from Simon Vorster, Ari Moshe Wolf. We've got Laura Nalbandian is speaking on Pluto transits. We have Kristen Fontana, who will be teaching on Mars and the core desires of the soul. It's really an amazing lineup, and we're doing it over 4 days. Everything is recorded. All the recordings are included in the live conference price. If you use the coupon code LOVE10, you can get 10% off from me for this conference. And that's off the full pass. You can also register for any of the individual lectures if you just want to drop in and learn. And you're welcome to join us for the free kickoff panel. We're going to be doing a panel where many of the astrologers from the conference are going to be talking about what they see as the biggest transits of 2025 and what are the core teachings from evolutionary astrology that they have learned the most from in their practice. So I'm really excited to share this with you and invite you to join us. This is the last week to register to be able to join us live. You'll be able to buy the individual lectures and the full conference recordings after the conference. But if you want to be there live, you can attend any of the sessions live, depending on what your time zone is. And it's just going to be a really amazing 4 days of learning and community. And I'll be your host pretty much in every single session. So I hope to see you there, my friends. The link and the details are all in the description to this video. And as always, if there's something that touched your heart in this, let me know or leave me a little star or a heart emoji. Tell me what you're working through. I love hearing from you so much. And give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I hope to see you again, my friends. Have a beautiful and blessed week ahead. And bye for now.